Alleluia. Om Mani Padme Om. Allah Satnam.
Welcome. You're watching Harmony and Diversity. Today we're speaking with Jan Lester. She's the Director of Public Affairs, Church of Scientology, Melbourne. Thanks for coming in again, Jan.
Hi, Norm. Thank you.
We've had a bit of a talk about Scientology last week, but just to set the scene again, I'll just reiterate what Scientology is, and I think it's this is from the website, and the important thing to start with, I think, is to simply say that Scientology is something not what one believes, but it's what one does. So it's behaviour. It also sees man as being an immortal spiritual being, and his experiences extend well beyond a single lifetime. His capabilities are unlimited, even if not presently realised. And the ultimate goal of Scientology is true spiritual enlightenment and freedom for all. I just thought I'd set that little scene because we're now going to go back to where we were last week, where we're going through the eight points of the cross, and which is your symbol.
Yep.
And those 8 points are?
They're the 8 dynamics.
Yes.
So the first one is the self-dynamic, so that's all about yourself. The second is the creative dynamic, which is family and anything associated with family. And the third is groups, so it could be a sporting group, a football group, swimming, whatever kind of group, a religious group. And then the fourth dynamic is mankind, so that's taking in everyone.
Yes.
And the fifth dynamic is living things, so all living things, trees, plants, animals. And the sixth dynamic is MEST, matter, energy, space and time, or the physical universe.
Yes.
The seventh dynamic is the spiritual dynamic, and that's about where man is a spiritual being. And the eighth dynamic can be called the God dynamic or infinity, because it encompasses the allness of all.
Thanks for reiterating that. I did have it written down. I could have made it easier for you, but I thought, no, I'd test you. But I think this goes to the point that Scientology is something one does, not something one believes in, because all of those things you're talking about are action-oriented. And perhaps we can talk more about, as we did last week, about what sort of actions arise in relation to those key points. One that sort of pops out at the moment, of course, is environmental issues. Where does Scientology find itself in relation to that? What sort of actions are taking place?
Well, they would be personal actions. We don't actually study the environment as such at the church, but we become better able in life. So if a person wants to go out and be an environmentalist, that might be their thing.
Yes.
They're better able at doing that.
Right. So Scientology doesn't have a sort of an international action group which is environmentally focused.
Well, Mr. Hubbard wrote The Way to Happiness, and it's a secular moral code. And there are 21 precepts in that, and one of them is take care of the environment. Right. So that would be where a Scientologist would take action, probably based on that. And we go out into the community and we'll plant trees with other community groups and play our part to care for the environment.
Just talking about community groups, how do you find that, so the community groups and other religious groups, how is Scientology accepted by them and recognised by them? What's their response normally? Well,
part of my job as the Director of Public Affairs is being involved in interfaith or multi-faith
Right.
And so I go to functions, I go to events and conferences and meet with different people of different faiths to learn more about them, to understand. And I'm now the Vice President of the Women's Interfaith Network, and I'm also the Assistant Secretary of Common, which is the centre of Melbourne's Multi-Faith and Others network.
Okay, so you're fairly active.
Very active,
Yes,
very
yes.
active in that area. And we have people come to the church on tours. The Interfaith Network has places of worship tours, and we're included in those. And we also go out to other places of worship too, just to learn more about the different religions. And I have lots of friends now, different religions.
Well, that's encouraging that works that way. We were talking about the four Ds, or the four dynamics last week, which I think that they're dynamic campaigns, aren't they?
Yep, that's right.
Could you illuminate a few of those?
Sure, I'd love to, because it's actually my passion. That's where I work.
That's your specialty,
That's
right?
my
Okay,
specialty.
well, that's good. That's excellent.
Yeah, my area of the church works with the external community.
Yes.
So we go out into the community and meet, whether it's interfaith or cultural groups or various kinds of groups. And we also go out and meet with religious leaders and politicians and media and different community group leaders about our four dynamic campaigns. One of them is human rights.
Right.
So that's divided into two areas. So we have Youth for Human Rights, and we have United for Human Rights. And Youth for Human Rights is for the littlies, the younger people, and then the other is for older children or adults.
Right.
So,
and what sort of activities do they undertake?
well, it's based on the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights,
Right.
and it's primarily it's an education campaign. So the purpose of that campaign is to educate children or older people about human rights, because we believe if you can't uphold your rights if you don't know what they are.
No.
And these are widely used in schools in Australia and internationally. So it's a fantastic educational program. There are beautiful public service announcements that are based on the 30 precepts, the 30 human rights.
Yes.
And an incredible video called The Story of Human Rights.
Right.
And then there's an educator's pack, and that's a manual divided up into all different lessons for the teacher, and teachers run through these with their classes.
Well, that's extraordinary. We're out of time right now, but we'll come back to that.
Okay.
We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and we're speaking with Jane Lester. She's the Director of Public Affairs, Church of Scientology, Melbourne. We're talking about the 4 Ds, and we're on human relations. And you mentioned that there was some fairly good publication done, which has gone throughout schools.
Yep.
Has that been produced by the Scientology group, that publication?
The church actually supports the program, and we fund the materials.
Oh, okay.
And the programs themselves are run by volunteers, and they could be from any denomination or people with no religious affiliation. And the materials themselves are based on the actual human rights. There's 30 of them. And so the people who produce these videos have made just beautiful videos depicting each human right. And we do have a very large centre in the US, and they produce these materials.
Yes, I've seen some of them on your website. They really are very well produced. That which raises an issue with volunteerism. There's a lot of your activities are carried out by volunteers. Where does the funding? How does the church itself fund itself for these pretty special publications, etc. How do they do that?
Yep, well, the church, we give donations for services, so like for anything, any university or school or course or whatever, we pay for courses that we do at the church.
Right.
And that's how the church supports itself. So that pays for the gas and the electricity and, you know, every other bill that's required for an organisation to run. And then the funding for the we call them 4D campaigns, which is short for Fourth Dynamic. That comes from people who actually donate because they want to. It's back onto that fourth dynamic. They are wanting to do something to help the fourth dynamic, which is mankind. And people will donate so that those materials can be made and then given out to the kids for free. So it's all free.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, that's dynamic one of the four. What's next?
Well, I also coordinate another program called Drug Free World.
Okay.
It's an education program as well. And it also has an educator's pack, has little booklets on each of the major or the drugs that are being used, and if there's a new one comes out, then we publish a new book. And it also has public service announcements to go with it. And the whole basis of that program is that if children are well informed and they have knowledge about drugs and what they do to the body, they will make their own choices. And I actually had personal experience with that. My girls, when they were little, they were probably about 8 or 9, they had a drug education lecture at their school and came home to me, and each in their own way said, "We don't want to do that to our bodies, Mum." And never had a problem with it. So that's one of the things with, I think with Scientology is, like Ron says, what's true is true for you. So I saw that and I thought, that was something that worked for me. So why not work on that and get that out so that other kids can have the same experience?
So how does that goes into schools?
Yes.
And what's the process for doing that? Getting the education department.
Well, there's you can go onto the website, which is drugfreeworld.org.
Yep.
And you can actually download the materials from the website.
Okay.
Or you can, we have volunteers who take email inquiries and then the materials can be sent out to the teachers. Okay. And we also do seminars and presentations for teachers. Okay.
Now, I don't want to pry into organisational secrets, but what's the proportion of the volunteers? It sounds as though you've got some fairly willing people working within the structure.
Yeah, well, we find when people kind of help themselves to be better and more able, they become happier in their lives and they want to help other people sort of achieve the same things. And so Scientologists are really into community work and volunteering and doing community work. But there's also incredible people out there doing similar things. And what we do, like our programs aren't designed to take over. People can use them in their own programs. So there are other people out there doing drug education or some sort of drug rehabilitation. And so our materials are available for them to use as well. And so that whole idea of volunteers also spreads out into other groups.
Yeah, because there's no exclusivity.
No.
So that it's not presented as a Scientology program.
No, it's secular.
Yes.
It's not religious at all.
No, that's a powerful way of doing things as well. Okay. There's a third point coming up. What's that?
The third campaign that I work on, it's called The Way to Happiness. I mentioned Mr. Hubbard's book, The Way to Happiness.
Right.
And there's actually a program that goes internationally and it's based on that book. And it's a secular program again, non-religious, and it has 21 precepts. For instance, take care of yourself, take care of the environment, which I mentioned. The obvious ones: do not murder, love and honour your parents, love and help children, 21 of those sorts of things. And very easy to apply to life and can be used by anyone. So again, that is an educational program and it's also being used in our schools.
Right. So okay, you've got 21 precepts for it, but what would be, do you come out with one statement, happiness is?
Well, it's probably about happiness really is if we were all following, like if we had that moral code in and we had that understanding between us, and we're not going to have anybody interfering with our life in a negative way because we're upholding a code. It's like a code of honour.
Yes.
We're going to be happy. And if you're taking care of yourself, you'll be happy. If you take care of your environment, you feel good about that. So it all comes back to the way the person feels about themselves and happiness.
Well, happiness. Happiness has got a lot to do with time, and we're out of it. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity. And we're speaking with Jan Lester. She's the Director of Public Affairs, Church of Scientology, Melbourne. And we're talking about the Scientologists' movement in relation to drugs and their activity with schools and publication and support. There's also another group, Narconon. Where does that fit in?
So Narconon is a drug rehabilitation program. The other one's a drug prevention program or education program.
Okay.
So Narconon's for people who have already started down the road taking drugs, and they go into this rehabilitation program, and the success rate is amazing. There's no drugs involved in it at all. Lots of one-on-one help, and they basically help not only to get off the drugs but to restore their self-respect and find out why they decided to go down that path in the first place.
Is that something, do they use this auditing process in relation to that? Do you know how it works?
No. It's they basically use technology that was devised by Mr. Hubbard. One of them is the purification rundown, and that's actually sweating out the toxins that have accumulated in the body. It's done in the sauna. It's done with lots of vitamins, water, lots of supervision. So that they will go through that first, get the toxins out, get the drugs out that are lodged there in the body, and then after that they do programs like the Way to Happiness. There's actually a program that they can follow on that one, and communication drills and just other courses about life that's going to help them feel good, feel better about themselves, and no need to go down that road again.
So where does this happen? Do you have centres that you do?
Yeah, it's international.
Yeah.
We have a major one over in the US where people go to train. Here in Melbourne we have one at East Warburton.
Yes.
There's a new one opening in New South Wales, which is very, very big. And they're dotted globally.
And do they work in conjunction with other groups doing similar things? So there's a crossover at all?
Not really, because they do run their own program. Not really sure actually whether or not other programs go and check them out. Probably do, but don't really know that.
Once again, you probably can't come out with exact figure on this, but have you got any idea of the rate of recovery?
I think it's about 78%.
That's very good.
Could even be a little bit higher. That's a number that I've sort of got in my mind. It's about 78.
That's about 78%.
Yeah.
And any particular narcotics involved or mind-altering substances?
Anything.
Anything.
Anything. Yeah.
Right. Right. So you could find yourself with nicotine addicts?
I don't. No, it's probably not really the drugs that I'm thinking of. No.
No. That's an interesting point to that question, because nicotine is a far more dangerous and health destructive thing in the community than any of the others, but it doesn't get treated in quite the same way. I don't know why that is. Okay, so that's and I made the mistake there about the fourth dynamic having 4 points. It doesn't have. That's just the fact that it's one of the 8 points, and that's mankind.
Yep.
Okay, let's have a look at the other. There's another 4 going along here, and it's all extant matter. Is that the next point? On the 8 points of the cross, we've got self, family, group, mankind, and then there's all extant matter. Is it?
The 8. You're talking about the 8th one, the 8th dynamic, which is the creator or supreme being.
Oh, no, I'm actually talking about the 5th one. Which is,
that's the living things.
That's right. All extant living matter. Now, that obviously has environmental connotations, but what else? Where does it go from there?
Well, basically the 8 dynamics is something that we, like their urges, we have an urge to survive. And so that urge to survive can be divided up into those 8 different areas. So if I am just concentrating on me and I'm not looking at my environment or I'm not looking at my family, I'm not going to necessarily do very well in life. We approach all of this from the viewpoint of taking in as many dynamics as possible. So if we're going to make a decision, we would base it on the greatest good or the greatest number of dynamics.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It also ties into, there was in an earlier discussion, we were talking about people having their senses expanded for a person listening or feeling or having something pointed out to them in their healing process.
Yeah, that's right. If a person is going through anxiety or having trouble in an area, it could be in work, could be in family, relationships, and all their attention is focused on that.
Yes.
It's not a good place to be. And so what Scientology does is educates a person, or they get more knowledge to be able to handle that situation. So that they then can approach it with more control and responsibility. And by doing that, when you feel you're in control of a situation or you've got responsibility over it, you feel better. So rather than being caught like this, you start to look out. So they kind of all intertwine, but they're actually all separate tools or separate things that we can use in life.
I need to take responsibility because we're actually running out of time. Now, this is a massive subject, Scientology, and very much like to discuss it further. Would you be available next week?
Love to.
That would be really good. Thank you very much, Jan.
Okay.
You've been watching Harmony and Diversity, and we'll be back next week, and we will be speaking with Jan Lester again. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.
Baha'u'llah, Shanti Om.